Okay. That one there. Okay, is everybody prepared? I know a lot of people are on mute right now, but we're going to try to get everybody up and running here. It's 7:30. I want to thank everybody for coming to our September meeting of City Island Rising. Everybody's been giving the ability to talk if they'd like to. We're going to try to keep this as interactive as possible. I know that a lot of you have reached out about a lot of different issues, and we've tried to incorporate as many of them into our agenda as humanly possible. If you look, I put the agenda in the chat, in the chat function. That way, everybody can kind of follow along at home, and we can all kind of work together to keep ourselves on track here, because we do have a busy agenda and we have a lot going on. Before we get down to business, I would just ask if everybody could just have a quick moment of silence. We are, again, on the verge of the anniversary, the 19th anniversary of the September 11th attacks, as well as everyone here is familiar with, there was a death on Orchard Beach of Ellie Che, a young woman who it appears may have taken her own life. And I would just like to have a brief moment of silence in remembrance of both Che and the victims of 9/11. Okay, thank you all for coming to our September meeting. For those of you who don't know me, my name is John Doyle. I am the president of the board for City Island Rising. I'll be leading today's discussion, and I'll also be moderating. Everyone should be given the right to talk. If you need to ask a question, just use the hand raise function and we will squeeze you in as soon as possible. But we're anticipating this is going to be a very good meeting. We did not have an August meeting, as everyone recalls, but at our June meeting, what we decided to do was, as a result of a lot of the July meeting, a lot of the questions we were getting were questions about kind of issues related to the criminal justice system and race and making people in our neighborhoods feel welcome. So as a result of that, I invited my friend, Reverend Dr. Pastor Deborah Jenkins, who's joined us here today, to give a presentation kind of explaining some of the anti-bias work she does in our community with both our police officers and her other work. And it's a real pleasure to have her. And without further ado, I'm going to clue her in right now if she's available. And we'll let her take it away here if that's okay by her. Pastor, are you available?
I'm here.
Great. So let me share your presentation and you just tell me when to change the slide. How about that?
That sounds great. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for making yourself available. We all really, really appreciate it. So let me just find it here and we will. If you could, Pastor, if you could just tell us a little, tell the people who don't know you as well as I do a little bit about yourself and, kind of your work in the community. I think that'd be super helpful.
Absolutely. I want to thank City Island Rising for inviting me through my friend John. I have been an activist in the 45th precinct. I'll put it like that because that's what binds us all. We're all a part of the 45th precinct. I live in Co-op City, however, and but my work as a pastor and as a community activist, a social justice advocate, expands beyond the confines of the 45th precinct in Co-op City. Where there is injustice, I typically show up in some way, shape, form, or fashion. I am an adjunct professor at the New York Theological Seminary, and I lead workshops nationally and even internationally around anti-bias, anti-racist, racism, Pan-Africanism, and Black unity within the Black community. And it does include harm that we sometimes cause to ourselves, but I am definitely one of those people who speak out against any institutionalized racism that may exist within the community. And of course, we know that there's been a lot to speak of this year in particular. In addition to us all experiencing a global pandemic known as COVID-19, and how do we continue to fight for justice, and how do we maintain or seek to restore peace where it may be missing, even in the midst of our changing norms as a result of the global pandemic. And so I try to do this with an eye towards transparency always, but also with an understanding that we are different, but cluing in on those things that bind us rather than those things that separate us. And it is from that perspective that John and I have grown close over the years, and how we definitely have a mutual respect for all life and the lives that are unjustly treated.
Yes. And Pastor, I'm just, again, so grateful, so thankful that you've decided to come here. And, you know, again, there's a lot of injustice in the world. I know you know a lot of what's going on. As you said, you're always there when something, when some sort of injustice happens. And I couldn't think of a better person to kind of lead us in this discussion. So I just want to thank you again.
Absolutely. And thank you.
Great. So it's I believe the slideshow is up. So you just tell me when you want me to go the first one, and we'll get going here.
Okay. So definitely I put together this presentation specifically for City Island Rising, because I think that all of our communities are unique, and I sort of wanted to capture, without spilling all of the angst that is common within these times, onto City Island. And so the title of this presentation is The Intersectionality of Justice and Protection, and you can certainly go on to the next slide. So we have to start, when we're talking about the intersectionality of anything, with the definition for those things. And so the first question is, what is justice? Next slide. So I use the Hebrew word tzedek for justice, because it is defined as to make right. There's no need to be verbose about a thing that we all seek in our lives, and that is that justice may roll, to make those things that are not right, right. Next slide. It goes on in terms of defining what justice is that it is a relational term for people living in right relationship with God, with one another, and natural creation. Did you realize, or do you realize, that sometimes it's much easier for us to collectively fight around issues of environmental injustice than it is for us to fight for the justice due to other people? And as it relates to whatever our relationship might be with God, some people don't believe in God. And so it makes it easier for us to go to those environmental issues even before we go to relationships with people. You can go on. Next slide. So after defining justice, we then have to consider, what is protection? Protection, the next slide. Again, I borrow from the Hebrew to define protection. And it goes on, you can go to the next slide, is defined as a person or thing that prevents someone or something from suffering harm or injury. I have 4 definitions that I'm presenting for protection. You can go to number 2. That which protects or preserves from injury or defense, a shield or a refuge. That's the second definition. And the third is any measure taken to guard a thing against damage caused by outside forces. And the fourth is the act of protecting or the state of being protected. Next slide. So what happens when the two intersect, when justice and protection come together? It creates a system of well, I'm jumping ahead. So when justice is equitable across all of humanity, protection of all humanity in the same manner is not merely academic, but is also practical. And I hope that makes a lot of sense to all of you. The equitable intersecting of justice and protection produces peace. What is peace? Peace is the righteous pursuit of justice and protection. However, the failure of justice and protection to meet in the center leads to unrest and righteous uprisings, many of which we've seen play out throughout this year. And I believe that it is beyond time that we all face and admit our failings, correct them, and become the ambassadors of peace that we'd have the world believe we are. Sometimes I believe that we paint a picture of who we see ourselves as being because we have for such a long time, the United States that is, led on so many different levels. But if we actually slowed down and looked around and see all of the injustices that do exist, I think we might reevaluate exactly where we find ourselves on the peace spectrum. And so I say shalom. And to also, like the prophet Jeremiah say, that we should pray to the Lord that we might be able to seek peace and prosperity in the city to which we've been carried into exile. And pray to the Lord for it, because if it prospers, you and I too will prosper. And those are the words of Jeremiah, the prophet Jeremiah, as spoken to Israel while they were yet in captivity. And the reality is that my people, Black people, we remain in captivity because of the lack of justice that is often shown to us on many different levels. And so tonight, I'm here and hopeful that there are others who feel that there needs to be a meeting of justice with protection, and then there might be a peace that we all seek and are able to have in our homes and in our communities.
Okay, well, Pastor, I want to thank you so much for that presentation. And I want everybody to kind of get in and raise your hands, and we'll start taking questions. The pastor, we have set up about 10 to 15 minutes for questions here, so everybody can kind of get in here. I guess for me, just to kind of lead the discussion here for a second, what can we do in terms of people maybe who haven't been, suffered injustice or haven't been, maybe the victims of discrimination? What can we do to be good allies and kind of further justice for all?
Okay. So I have been encouraged definitely by all of the protests with what we call allies being out on the front lines. I really have been encouraged by that, because I believe those are people who are saying, I may not, like you just said, I may not have personally experienced these same injustices. However, I want to be the person I believe the world has seen me as, and I want to take a stand against these injustices. Now, so do I believe that everyone should put their physical bodies on the line for the sake of justice? I do not. I do believe that there are ways that we, allies to those of us who continue to suffer injustices, can contribute in ways other than the physical danger that is apparent when we look at these videos throughout the country. There are ways to host talks like these, forums like these, where you bring in those people like myself and others who are victims and whose communities have been victimized, and have just these honest discussions. I don't feel like everything has to be so adversarial in order to express our positions. I think we can do it in a respectful way that will lead to some resolution. You know, I think it's something that's been so inherently a part of this nation that it's not going to disappear overnight. But if the conversations can be had in earnest, I think that's a huge step in the right direction.
That's good. That's good. Does anyone else have a question they would like to pose to the Reverend?
Did you watch these monsters for a while?
Mm-hmm.
Monica?
Oh, no, I'm not raising my hand, John.
Oh, okay. No worries. No worries. I guess from an institutional standpoint, as people start to come along with questions, I mean, in terms of maybe, and I know you know this all very well, but just kind of, you know, again, there's been redlining, there's been, you know, an unequal mechanism of enforcement, you know, of the laws in certain communities. You know, we go back to, you know, kind of the crack cocaine epidemic where they were treated differently. Mm-hmm. We go back to, you know, even stop and frisk of only a few years ago. And we don't see, you know, sometimes people are surprised that just because they don't see something right in front of them at the moment, that those things don't exist, but they do exist. And I was wondering if you might be able to expand on that before we get to the first question.
Absolutely. So let's start with stop and frisk. So some people who are not traditionally those who have been targeted for stop and frisk, for instance, right? Yeah. They will see the bifurcation of stop and frisk, which also has the element of broken windows, and they will latch on to the broken windows policies and say, well, yes, stop and frisk is just fine because it's going to protect our communities, when those two things are actually separate and apart. Broken windows is like quality of life issues. You know, drinking on the corner, having an open bottle or an open can of alcohol on the corners, especially during school dismissal times or times when children are more apt to be out, as opposed to simply being stopped because you quote unquote fit the description. And so I think sometimes that there is some confusion around those two very different issues, and they're sort of lumped together because often they're spoken of at the same time. But I think stop and frisk is inherently biased against Black and Latinos, in particular, the subgroup of the men within the Black and Latino communities. And so I have a husband and I have a son, and you know, the 45th precinct is very different from the rest of New York, but I'm very aware as a Black woman that when my husband and my son go outside of Co-op City, for instance, or outside of the 45th precinct, that they are just like any other Black male who may be stopped for no reason at all during the stop and frisk. And my husband, he went to Fordham University, and he was going in the evening, just to be honest with you, and he was stopped. He wasn't frisked, but he was stopped for no good reason, and he was on his way to school. So this doesn't just happen to everyone. And I think we have to be honest about the biases that are inherent within policing and within the laws in general, and just start talking about these things and not begrudge those type of laws being changed so that there can be some fairness. And you spoke about the crack epidemic in the 80s. I'm one to let you know that I was upset, and I when the Congressional Black Caucus, for instance, went to President Reagan and said, help us with crack. And I don't know how many of them today have apologized for their role in the over-policing in our communities and the long-term sentences received by crack addicts or those who peddled crack, when we know that President Bush had a big part to do with crack coming into the communities. And so, you know, I mean, I would really love for the Congressional Black Caucus to make an apology to its community, because we already know if President Bush had his hand in it, we already know about him. But I'm looking at a mother or a father and saying, you need to apologize to me. And a lot of these people still languish in prisons because of crack, where we have now, and I just got off of a call before this one with the captain of our precinct, and he was talking about the rise in overdoses of fentanyl, you know, and those are treated very differently. We have, and I asked him, I said, are we still giving out the Narcan kits? And so because of COVID, not as much as before, right? But I believe that every house of worship should have one just in case someone is having an overdose and we can help them. No such extension was made for Blacks when crack was ravaging Blacks. And so these imbalances, they are stark. You know, they are stark. And while I want to save people who are overdosing from fentanyl, let's really be honest. This did not happen for people who were addicted to crack and were stealing property out of the parents' homes and, you know, hitting people over the head. They were just carted off to jail when we realized that it was the same type of addiction that these young people or whomever are facing today. And we are approaching the epidemic of these overdoses and this abuse in a very different way.
You're 100% right on that. We actually have two questions. I'm going to go with the one that was written first. This is from Patrick. Patrick said, can you elaborate on how justice and protection can be balanced?
Hi, Patrick. Yes, absolutely. So I think, you know, like, for instance, I head up the clergy council for the 45th precinct, and I ran the agenda by the captain before the meeting. We've had the meeting scheduled for weeks now. And I said to the captain, can we have a one item agenda? And that item would be that we will have these meetings without politics being a part of it. And here's why. Because as a clergy person, I have to work closely with the community affairs officers, the NCO officers, and now the YCO, the youth coordinating officers. We don't want whatever they're feeling or getting from their unions to interfere in our mutual work together. So we need for the officers to know that, yes, we pray for you. We want your safety. We want you to return to your homes. The problem that is happening, and I have to say this very honestly, is that people, even clergy, are drawing lines in the sand when it relates to justice and when it relates to protection. There is a sense that if you're not in 100% support of law enforcement, then you are against them. And that is just not true. So I don't know if anyone kept up with the lieutenant who was hit in the head when they had a march across Brooklyn Bridge back in July, late July, I believe. And he was interviewed. This man had to stay in the hospital for days. When he was released, he gave an interview to WPIX. And he is not soured. He is not looking to retire. He said, we took an oath, and despite the social unrest within New York City caused by officers in New York or throughout the country, we took an oath to serve and protect. And if I had his name, I would share it with you. But all you have to do is go back and look at it. Yeah. And the reason I bring him up is because he summarizes the intersection of justice and protection excellently. He was not sound. This man, he had a concussion or whatever. He could have done the mass exodus along with other officers that we've heard have been leaving the NYPD, but he is so committed. He's been on the job for more than 30 years. He is still committed to the oath that he took. That's how we intersect the two, by reminding the officers and reminding the community of what we should expect from the officers. If we understand what we should expect from the officers, and I think the greater community does. I think that there's some bad actors within the community who don't understand, or perhaps they don't even care. But if the officers are committed to the oath that they took, they're going to provide equal protection to everyone. And I think that's the message that needs to be sent. And I think that's why it was important to me to, along with the captain, agree that we're going to keep politics at 1 pp. I operate on that level too, working down there with the commissioner and his deputies. But for the precinct and for our communities, we need to support them and they need to support the community. And I believe that's how we intersect justice with protection. And I hope I wasn't like rambling, and I hope I sort of answered your question.
No, I think you did. And again, people, we're still taking questions. You can either raise your hand or do a question and answer. Michael Morrison has had his hand up for quite a while. So Michael, you've been unmuted. If you want to ask your question, I want to give you the floor, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, John. And Reverend Jenkins, this is Michael Morrison. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Hi, Michael. Thank you.
Yeah. I have one thing I have just a mention of. I know two groups that work in the area of substance abuse. One is called the Harm Reduction Coalition in Manhattan, and the other is a national group, which I think is called the Drug Policy Coalition. Both are working towards an entirely different viewpoint about the perspective about drug use and addiction and, criminalization, decriminalization. If at any time you want, I can pass along that information to you.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you.
I had a further point because there's several things I've heard really since the whole issue of institutionalized racism has been in the forefront. I love the book and the idea about caste, and that by a woman, Isabel Wilkerson, which is really to look at things that we have a caste system, and that almost if you can see it through the lens of the caste system, you understand more about the racism that flows out of the caste system. So I think that's kind of a new analysis. But a thing that really, I heard it first from Jon Stewart, the late night comedy man, who's quite a bright man. He talked, one element about the struggle for equality, and a point he made that in our history, particularly since the freeing, the freeing of the slaves and, that equality. He made note that historically, and he at critical junctures, that one of which was like World War II, maybe one was World War I. But at the end of something that, was a kind of societal crisis, the society kind of gave benefits to non-Black people, that were financial and that were
GI Bill,
that were incentives and helpers to help them rejoin and actually raise up a little bit in the financial equity in the society. And he made note, and some of it was startling to me, because some of it, like after World War II, I think, we know there was an eminent service from Black servicemen, but somehow when it came to doling out these benefits, they were excluded.
Yeah, absolutely.
So he made about 3 points about that, and actually it's the first time I've heard that point of view. So the consequence of that, as he explained it, is that people of color continue to struggle for equality, and they keep the same struggle. They're trying to get equality, but at the same time, in comparison with their other citizens, they're not getting the boosts, for financial equity. So the society, so the government, has not offered them equity, in those crucial societal things. So, and one just other point that I heard yesterday or today, the CEO of Netflix said he's going to take like 1 to 2% of Netflix cash and put it in a bank that is, owned and operated. It's a Black financial institution. and he's going to recommend, and he's already gotten some agreement from the, CEO of Costco to do something similar. And they're going to try to create a movement like that. And I thought that, I don't know enough about that particular one, but I thought it was startling what Jon Stewart said about the times that the society has not recognized the need for the financial equity.
You're right. You're right. John, if I could, I
Yeah.
thank you, Michael, for those great points. Where to start? Yes, you hit it on the head about equity, and I teach this all the time, that I revere the sacrifice that Dr. King made, but I think there was a problem overall with the civil rights movement because it was a fight for equality rather than equity, because equity is exactly what Black Americans have not had. If you look, if any of you consider different industries, right? Just here in New York, not throughout the country. My family and I, we typically, just to go outside of New York, we typically vacation in Myrtle Beach. Myrtle Beach, if anyone is familiar, all of the Wings stores, those are the souvenir stores. You run in there, you get the stuff that you need, bathing suits and all of that. Those are all run by Russian immigrants, right?
Yeah.
In South Carolina.
Yeah.
Right? So you come back to New York and you look around, many of the traffic agents are like Bangladeshi or somewhere else, some East Indian ethnic group. If you look at the same is true for those who run the paper shops in the subways. Many of them are East Indian. So I'm saying this to say, Jon Stewart is correct. The research is correct. Equity has never been given to Blacks. Even when President Lincoln set up the Freedmen's Bank for freed slaves, that money was taken by whites in control and run underground to the point where Blacks never benefited from that provision. And of course, we're all familiar with the 40 acres and a mule that Blacks never got. We never got anything. And Dr. Joy DeGruy has a wonderful book called The Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome. I highly recommend it to any and everyone, because what she says, and she's absolutely correct, is that once our ancestors were freed from the bonds of slavery, first of all, slavery was supposed to have ended January 1st, 1863, but of course we know that it was another almost 3 years before our ancestors in Texas received their freedom. So we didn't even get that right. We didn't even get the right to all be freed at the same time. And so that has really been the story of Black life in the United States. We were just sent out, okay, you're free now, you got your freedom. But we were sent out with nothing. And so equity rather than equality should have always been the fight. And then we've been told, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Well, I'm sorry, did you forget that we were the ones working for free on the plantations, ensuring that you and your future generations would have generational wealth? But yet we're to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps?
Right.
Yeah.
It's incredible, And so, yes, he's absolutely correct. And there's a whole lot of work that has to be done. It's a whole lot of work. But these types of conversations begin that work, in my opinion.
Yeah. And continuing on that point, Reverend, we got another question from Monica. Monica's asking, what is your position on defunding police? She thought Al Sharpton's latte liberals comment was interesting. If you're familiar with that, or you'd like to expand upon that. And then I have, I have one additional question, and we'll kind of ride out with that. But we'll, if people want to continue to submit questions, we'll try to put something together working with the Reverend, because there's a lot of wisdom being espoused here, and we want to kind of bottle that up and kind of take that forward with us.
Okay. Hi, Monica. I just glazed over that comment by Reverend Al, so I didn't even get a chance to process what the latte thing meant. Is that like a soft coffee drinker? I'm not sure, but I can speak to it from this perspective. And I was going to stay away from it unless someone brought it up. But here is my position. This is my honest position on it. Again, we all live in the 45th precinct. Our precinct is probably it's always touted as being one of the best in the entire city, but definitely in the Bronx. So we're not outside, we're sort of different from the rest of New York. So having said that, I am not a selfish person. I don't only care about those of us who live in the 45th precinct, because as I just told you, when my husband and my son walk outside of the 45th precinct, they are targets for stop and frisk, right? So
right.
I heard Joy Behar on The View ask Jane Fonda, why not, because it's caused so much controversy, why not just change the term from defund the police to something else? Well, Jane Fonda is what we call an ally, but Jane Fonda doesn't live in the 47th precinct. Jane Fonda does not live in the 45th precinct, where there is always a threat of violence, or often a threat of violence. So how I see defund police, that was a non-starter from the beginning. What I would say is, and I know this is also going to come across as a liberal phrase also, but it's better than defund the police in my opinion. Let's reimagine policing. When we look at what happened to Daniel Prude in Rochester, that should have never happened to anyone, ever, any place. I think we have asked the officers to do more than they are qualified to do in terms of dealing with people who are mentally ill. But there was a little bit more going on with that situation with Daniel Prude, but we do know that he was, a spit bag was put over his head, but then he was wrestled down to the ground. So they should not be the arbiters of our safety totally. We need to reimagine how policing is done. So when you talk about defunding the police, there was never, I don't think anyway, at least as it relates to New York, there was never a call for us to just disband the NYPD and begin again. No, because there's still a lot of lawlessness. And in these communities that I just mentioned, just before coming on here, I heard that a man was simply walking across the street on 229th Street and was shot in his head, dead. This is crazy. So when you're talking about outside of where we live, and we have stuff that happens up here too, it's just not the best example for the lives that people have to continue to live in New York City. New York City, people in the 47th precinct are not begging for there to be a defunding of the police. We still need the cops to do their job. So let's not attach ourselves to a term like defund the police, because it makes the cops mad for reasons that they don't need to be mad. They need to actually hear what's being said. We need to do things a little differently. Again, I cannot speak to what Reverend Al said this morning. I have to go and read it in context, but this is, I say, reimagine policing. And there are things that they have been tasked to do that will be better done by mental health professionals and social workers, even as it relates to young people.
Oh, Reverend, even though you didn't hear it in context, you kind of answered it in the context, because he was speaking about people in the Hamptons who were saying defund and we don't need police, yet they're in the Hamptons and living a very privileged life. So you actually hit the nail on the head with that. Monica, I see you have your hand up, so I don't know if you have a follow-up there that you want to ask.
I just wanted to say thank you. What a great answer. And, you know, I also read the Sharpton comment quickly, but exactly as John said, his comment was people in the Hamptons can easily say do away with the police because they're not, as he put it, on the ground. And I also think an artificial distinction and a very harmful one is made between supporting Black Lives Matter and hating cops, which comes up all the time. And you know, I mean, my brother was a cop and my husband's father was a cop, and you know, I'm not going to say I hate all cops, but exactly, you know, obviously, but exactly as you say, we have to reimagine the way we deploy. And that's exactly to your topic of justice and protection. So thank you.
Yes, thank you, Monica.
I have a question. If it's okay, I would like to piggyback
Absolutely,
on
Stephanie.
the Reverend and Michael, back to the whole equity question. One thing that people don't really look at is that after slavery, we paid taxes for 100+ years and could not vote
Yes.
in the South. Meanwhile, it's illegal in the Constitution. It says you can't have taxation without representation.
Right.
But if we speak up for anything, it's like, well, that was the people before me. That was my ancestors, so you get nothing. Where if someone else comes in this country from other countries are allowed to get 2% loans and change their culture, their lives, their neighborhood, but yet they're not even willing to listen. Besides getting 400 years of free labor, that this country was able to be in the Industrial Revolution 30 to 50 years before other countries and be very successful. But they won't think about anything, giving back anything to the people that they have enslaved. And then they tell you to get over it, or you're angry. That's all I have to say about it, because I have a lot to say, but I know we don't have time.
Well, thank you, Stephanie, for sharing your views, of course, as well. The last thing I just wanted to, because I want everyone on the call to take something practically away, and I know, Reverend, you do a lot with education on bias, and we all have some subconscious bias. And I guess, what are the steps or what are the instructions that you give to either community members or members of the police department on how to recognize bias and then how to address it in the way they're going about their lives? Because that's something I think, again, we all subconsciously have it, so it's something we can all benefit from.
Yeah, well, definitely when I'm working with, let's start with the cops. I like to establish and hold on to a level of trust and respect with them. Because I operate on both the local precinct level and the 1PP level, sometimes there's not always that trust from the local level. So, but because they are the most important in terms of my everyday living, I need to reassure them that I sincerely, and you've been there when I've done this sometimes, I sincerely care about their safety. It doesn't matter if they're Black or Latino or white or whatever cop, I want them to get back home to their families, because guess what? I have that reasonable assurance every day. Regardless of the fact that I am not an officer, I have a reasonable assurance that I'm going to return home to my family each time I leave their presence and come back. They should have the same. And so I always seek to restore that type of trust in them, that I care about them while they're on their tour. But then I'm not afraid to have the real conversation, which is why I did go through the Citizens Police Academy. When I first became involved, it was after Trayvon Martin's murder. And then when, of course, Eric Garner, I knew that if I did not go and be a voice to the cops, as well as back to the community around laws, what's a law and what is our expectation that law should be, that I would have no part in the renewing of our communities. There's a theologian who I love to quote, his name is Dietrich Bonhoeffer. He was German. And while the Jewish people were being harmed in Germany, he was German, he was a pastor, he was over here enjoying the life, being a teacher, a professor at Union Theological Seminary, but he felt led to go back and involve himself in the liberation of the Jewish people, because he felt like if he didn't, he would have no cause with them, or they would have no reason to trust anything he said if they did receive their liberation. And so I try to speak on both sides to the community, and then not go before the authorities without intimating to them the trepidation that the community is having. So I'm real honest with the community as to what the laws really state, what they can and cannot do according to the law, and where it departs rather from what we think should be the justice. And I go to the police and I say, look, this is how you all are making the community feel. So I'm one of those people, and John knows very well, I have these straight conversations with people. It's not always welcome, but somebody has to do it, you know, and I'm able to leave people whole once I leave the conversation. This is something I've taught my children. You can speak your piece, but make sure you leave people whole. In other words, you have no need to tear somebody down in order to get your points across. We have to have these conversations, and to soft pedal it will never move us. So when I hear Stephanie speak about representation, taxation without representation, and then how people are always calling us angry, I would like for everyone who is not a Black person to tell me honestly, wouldn't you be angry if you're not being represented in the same way as others are being represented? These are the real uncomfortable and inconvenient conversations that we must have in order to move the needle. And I believe that that's the only way to do it. We have to have the conversations. They might be exhausting. We might fight it out over the conversation all night long, but if we can move the needle in the right way, in the right direction towards peace, then I'll say that the hours we lost in sleep have been worth it to restore some peace or to seek the peace.
That was a very powerful way to kind of leave us there, Reverend. Thank you so much for staying on the call. I don't know if you have a few minutes, but the chat is going crazy. People have a lot of questions for you. And if you have time now, great. If you don't, I know you're a busy person. We can send them to you later and we can get responses. But again, I just want to thank you. You're always full of wisdom, and I think you were the perfect person to speak to this, given also your dealings with the police department and kind of the natural competing interests there at times. And I think you balance those roles very well. And it's a pleasure to be your friend, to know you, and to work with you.
Thank you. I mutually feel the same way about you. I'm happy to stay. This is my last thing this week. So I'm happy to stay because I'm taking a break next week. So if there are any questions, Michael, I see the link. Thank you so much. Abby, I see what you're saying. You're saying if you're not angry, you're not paying attention. And yes, but Amen. Guess what? Allies get angry too, and that's why they've been out there leading in many places these protests, and I'm loving that. I'm absolutely loving that. There was a 17-year-old girl. I don't know if she was in Portland. It's Seattle, I believe. She was 17 years old, and she was reporting for her school paper, and she was on summer break like the rest of us, but she was trying to run with her mother to safety, but she got tear gassed. You know, she's a 17-year-old. And so I'm encouraged by young people like that, whose parents have them out there and not just staying in the safety of privilege. And that's another honest conversation. And that has to be had, you know, it's just an honest conversation. And it doesn't matter how high you rise and believe that your privilege has not given you advantages over Blacks and others, that just because you say you don't have privilege makes it so. And so for this little 17-year-old young budding journalist to be tear gassed and say, I'm still going back out there, that's encouraging to me. That's encouraging.
Amen. Yeah. Amen. Very, very true. Very much so. I learned a lot, and I'm sure we'll all continue to learn more. Lauren, are you there to take us into the next portion of the meeting?
Yes, I am.
Great. Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Deborah, Reverend Deborah Jenkins. That was phenomenal, and I think that trying to tie in what I have to say to what you said, I think there are some parallels because on the Waterfront Committee, we're trying to create more opportunities for Bronx residents to be coming to City Island, Black, Brown, Puerto Rican, Dominican, every different community member that we have in the Bronx. And I know that we've seen that in the community, people are a little bit resistant to that. So I know that we should take the words that you're saying about justice and peace in every aspect of the work that we're doing with Rising.
Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you. So the first thing, I have 3 things that I want to just bring people up to speed on. The first is the Department of City Planning has been and is moving forward now, starting next week, with their waterfront plan. And this is really an opportunity for us as a community to vocalize what we want in terms of waterfront access, accessibility, resiliency. There's a whole bunch of different frameworks that they have. So I'll post in the chat when I'm done the framework that you could do. But the event is this Tuesday at 4 p.m. It's a Zoom link, and I'll also share that. If you can't make it, let me know what you want voiced. I'll be there to voice about, like I said, community access, making sure that City Island has the waterfront planning that would make this community as vibrant and welcoming as possible. So that's the first thing that we're working on in terms of the Waterfront Committee. The second is the Thrive Next Ferry. I wanted to update people on that. It is moving forward. They presented today, being the Economic Development Corporation presented at CB10 meeting last night. So a couple of takeaways. One, they're saying that they're giving bike parking now. I want to follow up with them on that though, because I know bike pathways have not been as clearly marked, so that's a follow-up. They're committing to shuttle parking from the parking lot. And then they're still trying to figure out bus service. So right now, the closest bus stop to the Thrive Next Ferry proposed is about a mile away. So that's a little bit too far. The next one is Harbor. They said that because they're building the dock there, this might also be an opportunity to get Harbor Patrol closer to City Island and Thrive Next. And so that is also something that they're planning. So like I said, if you guys have any questions, if you're interested in the Thrive Next Ferry, let me know and I'll pass it on to CB10 and EBC as they're finalizing this new, hopefully extended ferry route, which it looks like they will be doing. And then the third and final thing that I have to say from the Waterfront Committee is earlier this week on, what was that, John? Tuesday night, CB10's Zoning and Housing Committee heard from U.S. Crane, who has ownership over the former Consolidated Yard lot. Consolidated is still there, but so a few things from that meeting. They said that Consolidated management is going to be there at least until December, and they're hoping to keep them there longer. But one of the flaws in the conversation that we found, as well as other community members who were on the call, was it's September, and if they're trying to really keep the boat yard there, they should have this contract. Sorry, John, my video, I keep trying to request video, but it wasn't going. It says the host wasn't letting me do video. Sorry, they said that, they want to keep Consolidated there, but they don't have any agreement in place. So that's something that we're trying to follow up on, how they're going to make sure that Consolidated stays there, because we're all committed to that. City Island should have our yacht industries. The second thing that they made clear is that, oh, here I am, okay. They're adding a curved entrance to make the entering and exiting the yard a little bit less of a production on the island. So they're saying, I think, as I understand, it's going to be U-turn, but they're also going to get those plans to us, they said after the meeting, so sometime soon. They're also interested in connecting local residents to jobs. So I'm not sure if this is just something that they're saying, but obviously Consolidated has given a lot of our community members jobs, and we're trying to make sure that whatever replaces this site is also giving community members job opportunities. So we're going to follow up with them on that commitment. And then another thing that they mentioned, but is still not fixed, is the noise. So a lot of community members who were on were vocalizing that there's a lot of travelers who are going in there early morning before 7 o'clock. And so there's a little bit of a concern that we're following up with on how to mitigate any of the sound and to make sure that it's not too much of a quality of life issue for residents. So those are the main things that I have from the Waterfront Committee.
Does anyone have a question for Lauren? Lauren's been going to a lot of meetings of CB10 for us and, kind of voicing, the viewpoints that we want to see espoused and doing it in a very, effective way. Does anyone have, and I would echo what Lauren said for the Department of City Planning's Waterfront Committee meeting. We really need, people there to say, again, if you want to see the Gateway project, we need you there. We need you there, and we need you, to echo some of the things Lauren has said. And we need people there that understand that our history, both past and future, is uniquely tied to the water here. Does anyone have any questions for Lauren on anything she presented? Please either raise your hand or use the function, please.
I have a question for Lauren.
Sure.
A lot of we have that dock at the end of Fordham Street. It's brand new, it's $1 million. I talked to Captain Thompson, the correction people, not the parks, and they use it to take it into the city. I emailed the mayor, the governor, give access, another example of something else they can use besides the subway. Since there's Throgs Neck, how hard is it to just make one more stop at City Island and go straight? I know people on this island go wacky because they're back in the 50s. People coming on and using it, but I think it benefits City Island because the stop is there. Even if people come up from the city, I think it helps our tourism. It's a great day to come up. It helped us not be on the subway like I was today, stuck for hours, which isn't great when you have a lot of people in this virus thing. But let me tag back to my question. Is there any way that we can push City Island? I've been pushing it with the politician, and they were unaware of it, that we have this dock, brand new dock. Only thing we need is the ferry, and they have ferries that can go into the city. And they said when I got back from the government, he wasn't aware of it.
Yeah, that's a great question. So EDC has actually examined that site during the last 2 or maybe 3 rounds of as they're figuring out where they're expanding to. The flaw in their thinking, though, Stephanie, I think that was you, Stephanie, right?
It is.
So the flaw in their thinking is that they're not adding people who would come to City Island as a result of having ferry access. Their numbers are only projecting what City Islanders would use the ferry access to get to Manhattan. So it's this flawed Manhattan-centric view of the world, which is hopefully crumbling down as a result of COVID and the flawed economic development strategies that we've seen throughout the city that don't favor the outer boroughs. And so that is one of the main points that I'm going to bring up on Tuesday night in the meeting, that ferry service is a no-brainer, especially with the health concerns that you brought up. We should be out, in the open. It's also a resilient public transportation mode if we're thinking about, flood mitigation strategies for our transit system. I know from a New York City dock builder that is actually the best site to have. It is a sturdy site. It is protected. It is a great opportunity for us to be trying to get them to bring ferry service here. So long story short, Stephanie, I agree. I am fighting that fight with you. I don't think that politicians, as I think a lot of people on this call probably know, we have a city council that's changing over majority as well as a mayoral administration. So I don't think right now it'll be discussed, but I think it's important for us to get it in the plan. And then that plan, as I understand it, will be going to the next administration and be like, hey, here's what you guys should be doing. And so I think that if anyone can come on and join and talk about those things, that's a great way. I don't think the politicians right now, unless they're staying in office, are going to be able to do. And so it's EDC, the Economic Development Corporation, who has control over it right now, which is a bit strange because it is a transportation system. So that's weird, but so EDC would be the agency that you're talking to, as well as DCP, the Department of City Planning.
Okay.
And yeah.
Thank you so much, Lauren.
Does anyone else have a question for Lauren? Lauren, I want to point out, everybody, because Lauren gave a very detailed, centric presentation, which I appreciate very much. It is, the finer points are in the agenda with her email address. So if anyone has any questions, please email Lauren, because she will get back to you, and she's doing a good job for us.
The last thing, I see Monica Gray has her hand up. I'm not sure if that's a holdover from.
Monica, is that for Lauren? You have your question?
Sorry, I was muted. No, that was a holdover. No questions.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Cool.
Okay. John,
Cool.
how do I make it back?
You have to click on, you have to hold on my name and then hit make host.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm on my phone.
Okay. You should be able to hold on my name, and then it gives in a different options, and then one of them should be make host. If you tap on my name. Does that work? Hold on. Okay. Anyway, we are having a little bit of a tech thing here. Oh, there we go. I have it. Hold on one second. Okay, there I am. And if someone else, we're working through some of the video aspects of this. Unfortunately, you can't. We were sharing the PowerPoint, which made it impossible to share. Reverend Jenkins, she apologized. She is a wonderful person, both to listen to and to see. So apologies for that. So we were going to have David Diaz, who's been doing a lot of work for the committee. He's one of our board members. He was going to give an update on a few different matters that he's been working very hard on for the committee. Unfortunately, he got called to a meeting for his job, so he may be getting on a little later. Basically, what people need to know is that David, myself, John Paradiso, had a conversation with Con Edison based on the letter we sent out a few months back concerning trying to put the utility lines underground. Long and short of it is that they are, it would cost a lot of money to do that as a short term. It would cost hundreds of thousands to study it. But really, 80% of the lines have been active before 1980. And they all have to be replaced really within 30 to 40 years. So that's already a $25 billion cost. So what we've been doing is trying to push, because our belief is that, a small community being added on to everything may allow them to put the wires underneath. As many people have Optimum or utility services, they know that these are, every time the wind blows and everything else, it is a problem for us. It is something that, is unfortunately very, inconvenient. We deal with people's utility, particularly their Optimum Wi-Fi being out during long periods of time. So that was the discussion there. What you also need to know is that in the 3-year rate plan that they approved, basically 40% of that charge they're claiming is for the increase in the property taxes to the real estate holdings they have. And then, 60% of the rest of it went for the gas lines and for smart meters that are being, installed right now. They are looking to revisit it in 3 years, and we'll see what we can do. We were talking about what are the objective criteria to review an area to put the lines underground. We're one of only a few neighborhoods that still has the lines underground. We asked when we asked them about significant outages in our community, they claim we've only had 3 significant outages since 2003, and since 2012 rather, which is after Sandy. And we're trying to get an accurate reflection of how long that is. They count that as usually something that is a little longer than 30 minutes. We're going to put together a report out, which we'll post onto our social media so everyone can see that. It's again, they claim that the loop, which is the outermost the outermost utility lines that run above ground, that we are in the third top of all loops, the top third rather of all loops within the city. So, yeah, we're still trying to get some answers. We're going to also consult with the Public Service Commission, which is a state entity that reviews the Con Ed lines and reviews their rate plans and everything else. And we're looking to get, kind of what are the differences from them between the loops and underground. I saw there was one question from Kai who asked, what is their definition of something significant? That was a good question. Kai, the answer for them that they said was a significant interruption is longer than a minute and affects at least 100 or 200 people to be significant.
My grandparents were phenomenal. We would go back and
so that's what it is right now. We are still reviewing it with them. They claim that it would cost $30 billion to put in the lines, but then at the end of this, they did acknowledge they're under tremendous pressure, not just from our community, a lot of communities in Brooklyn, a lot of different legislative officials and everything else. And they concluded our meeting with the phrase, there may be light at the end of the tunnel, which, yes, is a pun, but may also be that they are looking, eventually there will be a plan for this. I know this is something Mayor Bloomberg pushed for. So, to be continued there. But just so you know, David's been working on this. I've been working on this. Other people have been working on this. And we're going to move forward. We are also doing a clean sweep, which will be on September 26th. If people want, if you go to our agenda there, it says that if you go down to the events, it's the event in the middle. And basically you can suggest what sites you think we should clean. We've been in touch with the sanitation department. They are going to be providing materials. I'm probably also going to get in touch with our, with Carl at the hardware store, as well as some of the other small businesses, and see if we can get some other supplies donated. But we are in the process of moving this. So if everybody wants, it's, again, we love your participation. It's a bit.ly in the middle, and it's CIR clean sweep. So please, the more hands we have, the lighter the work will be for all of us. Beyond that, I wanted to update everyone on St. Mary's. If anyone hasn't seen, I know St. Mary's, because it has been inactive, has been a concern for many within the community. We did put a post up actually at 5 o'clock today. It says it would appear that the land surrounding St. Mary's School, both the pastor's house in the corner of 596 Miniford Avenue and the nunnery next to it, which is 176 Kilroy Avenue, has been sold to an LLC. The sale happened in April of last year, and it was registered onto Acris in July of 2019, so a little over a year ago. The school, as far as we can tell, has not yet been sold. And, the site has some restrictive zoning. We did reach out to the property owner. She has no plans as of this time. If plans do become available, we will, of course, let the community know. But we put this on our social media page, so we encourage everybody to check that out. As of right now, it's just that we're aware of it. There are no DOB plans in there to do any renovations, and there are no plans before the community board. I spoke to the district manager a short while ago. So just something to keep on our radar is St. Mary's. Beyond that, we have some upcoming events that will be happening. We have this weekend, through the work of Louisa Benedetto, who's a member of our board, and many others, we are going to be participating in the Waterfront Alliance's City of Water Day on Saturday. It's Saturday, September 12th. We are going to start at 1:30. We're going to gather at Schofield Street on the Eastchester Bay side of Schofield Street, the 239 Place side of Schofield Street. We're going to gather at the end at the beach, and we're going to do a kayaking all through, hopefully around City Island to boost, the desire and the public awareness for, to basically have great waterfront access and waterfront activities within the community itself. Yvette, I know you had voiced that you wanted to sign up. I'm going to send you the link yourself, but if anyone else wants to see it, again, in the agenda, it's the second page, events, the very first link. So that will be coming as well. And I want to thank Louisa for setting up the event and working with the Waterfront Alliance to get it on their website. And I want to thank Beverly. Beverly has planned a waiver for us that everyone's going to need to sign. And again, social distancing with masks and everything else is going to be required at all times. So it should be a fun event, but we are also being safe. And right now, I believe we have about a dozen people signed up for that event. So if you'd like to sign up, it's right there on the second page. First event, part A, and it's bit.ly dash CIR City of Water 2020. So thank you to Louisa for that. We already went over the paddle. We went over the clean sweep. Working with Beverly Jones, who's also on this call, we put together a census call-a-thon. I know several of you participated. We had, I believe about 6 or 7 people on the call. At the end of August, we actually reached almost 200 City Islanders to remind them to fill out the census. The census deadline date is September 30th. So we're trying to convince everyone to fill out their census. It couldn't be easier. It's mycensus2020.gov. So please get onto the census website. Encourage your neighbors to fill out their census if they haven't done it. We're literally leaving thousands of dollars on the kind of the table there that should be entitled to our neighborhood, for schools, for roads, for hospitals, for all sorts of things, for other assistance programs. We're leaving money, and City Island still, right now, approximately 35% of City Island has not been counted. We can do much better than that, and we're going to be doing another call through. We're going to be doing it on September 29th, the day before. It's super easy. You don't actually need to dial anyone's number. It's all, they float into your phone. It's super easy. Everyone that I spoke to was really grateful for the call. Many people had filled out the census, and the hope is if we can get a group together, we can call through, 200 people of a neighborhood of 4,500 is almost double that neighborhood in today. So please have time. Let's try to make a difference in that way. That's the benefit when we ask for things in the longer term. People we get counted, stronger of a neighborhood we're going to be in all our dealings with city, state, or federal agencies. Beyond those events, we're planning 3 other volunteer activities for October. We're going to be doing the Sea Grant program, which is what Helen came to in our last in-person meeting. There's an app now, so we have all these issues with flooding on certain streets and non-adequate drainage. We have collected, Dave, as myself, those of you who have been sending it to us through the City Island Rising website, email, cityislandrising, one word, @gmail.com. We have almost 450 photos over the last 3 years of flooding within both Pelham Bay Park and City Island. So anytime you see large flooding, drainage that's not adequate, please take a photo, email it to cityislandrising@gmail.com. And that way we are documenting these things, because as money has become available, we're going to want these things addressed. And we've been speaking to our state legislators and our other elected officials as well. So these are super important things. We're still working on the blood drive. There's been some complications there with the mayor's office. We're trying to work through them. Assemblyman Benedetto has been reaching out to the governor's office for guidance. We're trying to get it right now at the community center. Pat Grondel's been very helpful. We're just trying to make sure that there's no barrier in getting approved and that the community center won't get fined for doing something nice for the community, believe it or not. So it's crazy, but we're working on that. And then finally, we did a Narcan training. Everyone remembers back in December of last year. We're going to be doing another Narcan training. This time we're going to be doing it hand in hand with some of the small businesses, particularly our nightlife establishments, to get them trained in Narcan and their staff in Narcan. It's going to be a virtual training. So if anyone is interested in partnering on any of these initiatives, Sea Grant, Blood Drive, Narcan, cityislandrising@gmail.com. Email us. There's always stuff to help. Does anyone have any questions on any of the things I've just presented on? Checking the chat. Okay, well, if anyone does, you can bring it up at the end when we do new business. The only other thing I have right now is I do see some of our elected officials have sent representatives here. I see 3, if I'm not mistaken. Farah, you were the first on, so I want to give you the first right of refusal. Do you have anything you'd like to present from the council member?
Oh, thank you so much, John.
Yes,
thank you for
absolutely.
the Reverend Jenkins for the great presentation earlier as well. I do want to mention a few things after hearing some people. As far as the asking for a ferry stop at City Island, you never reached out to the councilman's office. We were instrumental. The councilman got the ferry stop at the Ferry Point Park. So you should reach out to us as well. I know you said you reached out to the governor and the mayor's office, but I do highly recommend you reach out to our office as well.
Absolutely.
And my email is frubin@council.nyc.gov, or you could just call us 718-931-1721. Also, all summer long, we have been doing weekend cleanups with our Wildcats organization to help address all the major litter garbage issues that have been going on each weekend during the summer. After Labor Day, of course, that's going to end. We do have to focus them on other areas of the district, but we are still continuing with a weekly cleanup in the community event. We did do one there on City Island by the beach at the bridge a few weeks ago. And I know you're doing some events as well. And if you would like our office to also coordinate an event, just reach out to us with a location and we'd be happy to set that up as well.
Farah, I'll absolutely be happy to work with you on that. We actually have a web form. I'm just using this as a short plug in here.
Sure.
If anyone has any suggestions as to sites we should clean on City Island, you can use the web form to give us that suggestion, and then we'll work with the sanitation office and with the council member's office to facilitate that. So we're asking for you guys to be interactive.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Then we also just let you know about a Veterans Resources event during COVID, which will be on the 18th. You have to RSVP with our office to get the login information. So for your veterans out there, or anyone who wants that information, please call in to us. And I think that's it for me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Farah. Does anyone have a question for the council member's office before we move on to the next elected official? Okay. Farah, thank you for attending the meeting, and thank you for sharing what the council member has been doing on our behalf. I know, Marielle, you're here representing Comptroller Stringer. Would you like to update us on what the comptroller's been up to? I know he's been in the news lately, but you might have some stuff on the governmental side you want to share.
Hi, everyone. It's Marielle from the Comptroller's office. I don't think you guys can see me. I don't know how this works, right?
Hold on. I will promote you to a panelist, and then they should see you. Hold on. Can people see? Hold on. Let me see you here.
I'm here.
Can people see you? I'm trying to ascertain that because do you have your video on?
Video.
Hold on. Let me try to get your video on here. Hold on. Let's see here. Sign co-host. Yes. Okay, you should be able to turn your video on.
Yep. Hi,
there
everyone.
We go. Hey.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. My name is Marielle de la Cruz. I am the Bronx Borough Director for New York City Comptroller Scott Stringer. I just wanted to say hi. I've been to 2 or 3 of City Island's Rising meetings, and I hope to, throughout the fall and the winter, hopefully see you all in person. This weekend, I have a few events that I'm attending that I committed to, but I will try to make it sooner rather than later to City Island, at least to say hello, to eat.
Yes.
Say hello, and talk to folks about whatever issues they may or may not be having. What I will just mention, we've been doing a lot over the summer when it comes to small businesses and back to school. So when it comes to small businesses, just asking for federal support to support the small businesses that a lot of them are struggling right now, especially with the rules that happen with outdoor dining, and the fact that not everyone has space for outdoor dining. Everyone's, situations are different. But also too, we have a back to school guide that was released today with all of the resources that we can compile from the DOE just in one place. John, I will send that to you right now so that you have it and you can share.
Yes, you got it.
Yeah, we're planning to share that in other languages. I think for now, it's just a few pages that are translated in other languages because we know that it is needed. But that's all I wanted to say. And again, folks can always reach out to our office with constituent concerns. I know John reached out to me and I gave him some sort of an answer for a few questions, not the full answer, but some sort of an answer for questions that he had regarding a few issues that are really dear to folks on City Island. But what I can do I guess I could do that now on the chat. I could just put my contact information so that folks can see it. If you have any questions for me, feel free to reach out. Thank you for folks participating in different spaces. A lot of folks here, when I invite them somewhere, they attend. So thank you so much for that. And like I said, COVID, I'm not a homebody. So the COVID situation, at least that is my privilege point, that is my only situation that I like to be out seeing folks. So hopefully that happens very, very soon. And thank you so much, John, and everyone else for all of the work that you all been doing, how proactive you have been, and also too for facilitating a conversation like you all had tonight, because that conversation, I've heard it in other places and it does not go as well for lots of reasons. But thank you so much for having me. And I hope again to see you all at one point.
Thank you, Mario. And we definitely, they're going to need your help and the comptroller's help keeping an eye on Rodman's neck. So, I'll continue to be reaching out to you for assistance and for the comptroller Stringer's oversight of that problem.
Yeah, it seems to be a lot more convoluted than people assume it is. So folks in my office are always looking at it. When I ask a question, they're like, okay, let me get back to you. And it's a lot, it seems like a lot is going on. But hopefully we can get your response whenever you need them in a timely manner.
Thank you very much for your assistance. Appreciate you being on the call. And then I see we have also, we have a 518 number, which is usually a number from Albany. And I'm assuming that maybe Senator Biaggi's representative. So I just want to give her the opportunity because they did also RSVP if they are on the line and they would like to present and let us know what the senator's up to. We all would love to hear that as well.
Hi, John. Yes, this is Jordan Jones, Senator Biaggi's Chief of Staff. Thank you hi, how are you? Thank you for inviting the office to this very important meeting and discussion. I did want to give an update on the conversation that you and I had last week in regards to the Mother Nature Bond Act. The senator has agreed to write a letter to the governor, making sure that we raise the issues of flooding to him and to account for the projects that we need worked on. So if you could share some of the more recent photos that you have received, I know it's been talked about or written about many times, so that way we can add that to the portfolio once that letter comes out. And we'll be looking to draft that within the next coming weeks. And I can circle back with you around the sign-on that we had talked about.
Great. Jordan, thank you very much for that.
Absolutely. It's extremely important. I know now times are dire when it comes to money, but like you said, when pots become available, it is important that the issues that are ongoing are risen so that they can be addressed when that time comes about. So thank you also for bringing that to the senator's attention again.
Absolutely. Thank you for jumping on that for us. Does anyone have any questions for Senator Biaggi's office? Anybody have any questions for Jordan? Okay, Jordan, thank you very much for your presentation.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, John.
Thank you. All right. That concludes all the business on the agenda, but does anyone, we're going to go right to new business and old business. We'll put them together. Does anyone have any questions they want to ask? Just raise your hand or unmute yourself and let's get those questions out. I know we've had a little bit of a long meeting, but I know, City Island, there's always many issues. So if anyone has a question, now is your time. Wow. That's never happened before. Nobody has a question. All right. Well, everybody, I want to thank you all for taking the time. I want to thank our elected officials and their representatives for getting on the call. I want to thank Pastor Jenkins, who I think shared a lot of illuminating items with us and to help us gain perspective on some of the issues we're having as both a community and as a country. I want to thank Lauren for her very detailed and specific presentation as related to the Waterfront Committee. And if anyone has any questions, any concerns, feel free to email us at cityislandrising, one word, @gmail.com. And, you know, we check the email box every day, and then either myself, Beverly, Kim, Lauren, Louisa, Teresa, John, David, Dan, one of us will be getting back to you if you have any concerns. We hope to see you. Again, I think this City of Water Day and the kayak event is going to be a really great event. So again, we're going to start meeting at 1:30 and we're going to get off at 2 o'clock. So I want to encourage everyone who's able to do that to email us, to fill out the web form and come join us. It's going to be a fun event and a good way to spend your Saturday. And if you can't do that, I hope you can make it to either the cleanup event or the census event so we can call through and make a positive difference for our community. Thank you all so very much and have a nice night.